Story 1. The Wendigo of Black Elk Forest. I've never told this story to anyone, but I feel like I have to now. Maybe it'll help someone else avoid the same nightmare I barely escaped from. It happened in the winter of 2017. My friend Josh and I had decided to go hiking in Black Elk Forest, South Dakota. It was a place we both loved: endless trails, dense woods, and a feeling of isolation that was almost comforting. But that winter, the woods weren't just isolated. They felt forsaken. The first night, we camped near a frozen lake. The air was deathly still, the trees weighed down by snow, their branches like skeletal fingers pointing toward the sky. As the fire crackled, Josh told an old Native American legend, one about the Wendigo. He said it was a spirit of insatiable hunger, cursed to roam the forests, devouring anything in its path. I laughed it off. Just a scary story, right? But then, that night, I woke up to a sound. A shrill, almost human wail echoed through the woods. It didn't sound like an animal, but it didn't sound fully human either. Josh heard it too. We exchanged uneasy glances but convinced ourselves it was just the wind. The next day, the forest felt wrong. I don't know how else to put it. The trees seemed taller, darker. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was suffocating. And then we found the footprints. Large, elongated prints in the snow. But what made my stomach twist was the shape. Almost human, but with clawed toes that dug deep into the ice. They weren't ours, and they weren't from any animal I'd ever seen. That night, the howling came back, but closer. Then, we heard footsteps circling our tent. Slow, deliberate, crunching in the snow. My heart hammered in my chest. Josh grabbed his knife, but we were both too terrified to move. Then, the smell hit us. Rotting meat, sickly sweet and foul. I could hear it breathing just outside the tent. And then, silence. We didn't sleep. At first light, we bolted, packing up as fast as we could. But as we hurried back toward the car, we saw it, standing between the trees. Tall, at least 8 feet, emaciated but terrifyingly strong. Its skin was stretched thin over its bones, gray and mottled. Its eyes were sunken but glowed with an unnatural hunger. And its mouth, God, its mouth was too wide, filled with jagged, yellowed teeth. It tilted its head, and then, with an impossible speed, it moved. We ran. We ran harder than we ever had before. I could hear it behind us, its breath like a whisper in my ear. I felt its fingers graze my jacket as I threw myself into the car. The last thing I saw before we sped away was the creature standing at the tree lean, watching, smiling. I haven't been back to Black Elk Forest since. Story 2. The Wendigo of the Northern Pass. I worked as a truck driver for nearly a decade. Long hauls, overnight drives, seeing America through the windshield. Some people hate it, but I loved it. Until one night in 2019, when I saw something I shouldn't have. I was driving through the Northern Pass in Minnesota, cutting through thick woodland in the dead of winter. It was past midnight, snow falling in thick sheets, making it nearly impossible to see. That's when I saw him. A man? No, something like a man, standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, heart hammering. The truck skidded, tires fighting against the ice. But the figure didn't move. It just stood there, staring. I flicked on my high beams, and that's when I saw it. It wasn't human. Its limbs were too long, its fingers ending in curled, black claws. Its skin was deathly pale, almost translucent, and its eyes, deep, black pits that swallowed the light. I sat frozen, gripping the wheel. Then it moved. Not like a person. It twitched, jerked, its limbs snapping into place like a puppet on broken strings. And then it grinned. I don't remember shifting gears. I don't remember pressing the gas. All I remember is the sudden rush of speed, the wheels spinning as I barreled forward. I swear I hit it. I felt the impact. But when I checked my mirrors, nothing. The road was empty. No body. No blood. Nothing. But then, thump. Something landed on the roof of my truck. I nearly lost control. I could hear it, scraping, clicking, like claws raking against metal. I floored it. For miles, I drove like a madman, the sound of scraping above me, the feeling of something watching through the windshield. Then, silence. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station. When I finally got out to check the truck, my blood ran cold. The metal of my roof was torn, deep claw marks raking through the steel. I quit truck driving that year. Never took that route again. But sometimes, on winter nights, I dream of black eyes staring at me through the windshield. Story 3. The Wendigo in the Cabin. I grew up in a small town in Michigan, surrounded by dense woods. My grandpa owned a hunting cabin deep in the forest, and every winter, we'd go there to hunt and ice fish. But one year, when I was 16, something changed. We arrived just before a blizzard hit. The snow came down fast, trapping us inside. It wasn't unusual, so we made the best of it. Warm fire, hot cocoa, and stories passed down through generations. That's when my grandpa told me about the Wendigo. It's not just a legend, he said, staring into the fire. You see it, you run. You hear it, you pray. That night, the cabin felt too quiet. The wind howled outside, but something about it didn't sound right. It was almost human. Then came the knocking. Slow, deliberate. Not on the door, but on the window. I froze. My grandpa motioned for me to stay put, grabbing his rifle. He moved to the window, pulling back the curtain slightly. I saw his face go pale. He didn't say a word, just backed away, rifle trembling. Then, in a whisper, he said, "We don't open the door." The knocking came again, louder, and then a voice. "Let me in." It wasn't human. The voice was garbled, wrong, like someone imitating speech but getting all the sounds just slightly off. My grandpa put a finger to his lips. We waited, breathless. Then we heard it move, scraping against the cabin walls. Slow, methodical, circling. And then, the smell, like rotten meat. I wanted to cry. The knocking stopped. The smell faded. But we didn't sleep. At dawn, my grandpa finally stepped outside. There, in the snow, were the footprints. Large, misshapen, and leading back into the woods. "We leave today," he said. I never went back. And to this day, I never open my door when I hear knocking in the middle of the night.